I think a lot of attention here in the state of Wisconsin is focused right now on our college campuses, where we are seeing an increased level of COVID-19 experience. Certainly throughout the UW system, I think it's actually quite striking that you have 7 communities that are represented among the top 20 communities in the country on essentially a per capita basis in terms of positivity rate. And that is, I think, an alarm we should all be listening to. It's disheartening, quite honestly, to see in the New York Times analysis earlier today that when you look over the past week, that Wisconsin now is ranked number 4 in the nation in the growth of cases by the measures that it is using, which tells you that a lot of our young people are not following the social distancing, are not following the recommendations. And my fear is that this is going to have a disruption, not only on the college campuses, which we're starting to see already, but if those students return home, I know that there have been some attempts to quarantine them in their dorms. And not surprisingly, there are a number of people who don't like to be quarantined in their dorms and may return to their homes, where they're more likely than to spread the disease if they have it to their parents, to their grandparents, to older people in the community. So we clearly have an issue in this state right now with young people, particularly university-age students, college students who are testing positive. Fortunately, and Dr. Weston will go into this, we have seen several areas in Milwaukee, although we have seen several areas in Milwaukee where we are seeing increased positivity rates. It is not reflected in our overall positivity rate, at least it wasn't earlier this week, and that we are still hovering just under 5% or around 5% positivity. We would like to get under 1%, which is where New York City is right now, but we certainly are not at the levels that we're seeing, for example, on the UW-Madison campus. Our testing does continue here at the UMOS location, at the Custer location. I want to make sure everybody is aware that as of Tuesday, this past Tuesday, the National Guard testing locations changed their hours. And the reason they changed their hours was to maximize and to accommodate for fall daylight hours. And so they're moving the times. Instead of closing at 7, they are closing at 6. They are opening at 11 a.m. Mondays through Thursdays, from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays, they'll be open from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. and they will continue to be closed on Sundays. For Wednesday, September 16th, we had 832 people being tested at UMOS, which I think is a very solid number. At Custer, it's 389. We'd like to see that number a little higher. Our Milwaukee total this week is 3,594. Again, we want to see people get tested. We want people to be tested negative, but we want them to be tested. So please make sure that you're doing what you can if you feel the need to be tested. I had a press conference this morning with Jeanette Kwolek, our health commissioner. She noted that her first public appearance in Milwaukee as health commissioner was getting her flu shot over at the neighborhood house on the west side of Milwaukee 2 years ago. Her final press conference is at the neighborhood house getting her flu shot this year, 2 years later. But the point that she made and I made that I think is very, very important is that unlike COVID-19, we currently have an effective vaccine to prevent the flu. And it is important for people to get this vaccination because a combination of the flu and the COVID-19 pandemic disease is not a combination that any of us want to have. During this pandemic, COVID-19 and the flu may be spreading at the same time, increasing the risk of catching both diseases at once, not a combination that any of us wants to have. It's possible to be infected with the flu and COVID-19 at once, although it's too soon to see how common such co-infections will be. So getting a flu vaccination will help people and help us reserve our healthcare resources for those individuals who are testing positive for COVID-19. We don't want to use up our hospital beds. We don't want to use up other healthcare assets on people who have the flu, which can be avoided by having people who have COVID-19 using that. We want them to use it instead. In addition, the flu vaccination can help keep children, working adults, older people and people with problems out of the hospital, which is exactly what we want to do. It's an important preventative tool for people with chronic health conditions, which I think is very, very important as well. and it can be life-saving for children. So being vaccinated yourself may help protect you, but it will protect people around you. Again, it goes to the patriotic nature of what we're trying to do here. Masks, I believe, are very patriotic because you're not only protecting yourself, but you're protecting the community. Vaccinations fall in the same category. You are not only protecting yourself, you're protecting the community. To me, I look back at these films that I watch on World War II, where this country was united in trying to defeat the enemy. Right now, our enemy is the pandemic and the flu. And so we want to do what we can to be patriotic. The vaccinations will be free, and we're looking at a start date for the city vaccinations of around October 5th. I'm also pleased to announce, and you'll hear more about this from Allison, to announce that today's briefing will feature the Test Up MKE campaign. And this is an effort that has come together with a collaboration of local health systems, of the health centers, as well as the City of Milwaukee Health Department, Milwaukee County Department of Health Services, and Wisconsin's Department of Health Services. And Allison will give us more information on that effort, again, which is to have more testing done as well. But with that, I will turn it over to our County Executive David Crowley. David.
Thank you, Mayor Baird. Thank you for your leadership, and I want to say thank you to everybody for being here, and thank you to everyone who's been doing these calls for the many weeks that we've been doing it. Today, I want to basically talk about what we're doing here in Milwaukee County, and we announced the launch of two programs to help Milwaukee County businesses and restaurants who have been impacted by COVID-19. Both programs are supported by CARES Act funds. The Small Business Recovery Initiative Grant Program is for business owners facing immediate financial emergencies due to COVID-19. The applications for this program are now open, and grants will be awarded to qualified businesses. Grant amounts will range anywhere between $7,500 up to $20,000. Applications for the program can be found on the Milwaukee County Department of Administrative Services Economic Development Division's webpage. And you can visit county.milwaukee.gov to find that information. Priority for these grants will be given to businesses that include a letter of support from a member of the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition. This coalition consists of a group of Chamber of Commerce supporting entrepreneurs of color, women, LGBT, and veteran-owned businesses, and other enterprises in historically underserved places who did not have access or don't have access to flexible and affordable capital. We're also making sure to invest $3.5 million of relief funds in the Community Resource Navigator Employment Program, which is a partnership with Employ Milwaukee and WRTP Big Step. These funds will help add about 275 to 300 additional employment opportunities and increase the number of placements in the program. The projections show that Milwaukee County's financial needs could reach about $300 million when we think about direct costs, lost revenue, reopening costs, and the services needed that continue to increase. And so currently CARES funding, it provides a temporary stopgap measure to address these immediate needs of the county and our residents. And I continue to implore our state and federal partners to provide additional and direct funding to Milwaukee County and enable us to effectively respond to the challenges caused by this pandemic. And Allison True will be joining us, as the mayor stated on the call, to talk about the exciting new initiative with Test Up MKE. We are proud to be a partner with representatives of our federally qualified health centers, private healthcare providers, and the Milwaukee Health Department and our other local public health officers on this important tool that will make it easier for all Milwaukee County residents to get the information they need about COVID-19 testing. Some folks may be wondering what it's like to get a COVID-19 testing, and I can share with you that I've been tested. And so I can tell you that it was quick, it was painless, but yes, it was uncomfortable. But we got in and we got out, and we were able to get those results. And knowing my results, provided a sense of relief for not only myself, but my family as well. So it's extremely important that we increase our testing. And so you can always visit 211 or visit the Impact website to find a testing location. The mayor just touched on our National Guard sites. So we have to make sure that people are getting tested because, again, we have to lean on one another in order to get past this pandemic. And with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Weston.
All right. Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Good afternoon. First to our numbers, we have had 26,056 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in our community and 422 individuals who died. As we progressed through this pandemic, one of the challenges has been confusion and misinformation. And that confusion often centers around testing. That's not to try to point any fingers, because indeed it's a confusing virus. It's different from many viruses and illnesses with which we often encounter. For example, many similar viruses are quite severe in the very young. COVID doesn't seem to be. Many similar viruses are not highly contagious until we show symptoms. With COVID, we are highly contagious before symptoms even begin. With many infectious diseases, a negative test means you don't have the disease. Not necessarily always the case with COVID. Each of these unique attributes of this virus were not known when the pandemic first began. This led to confusion, to missed opportunities for messaging, and in too many cases, people throwing up their arms and deciding not to listen to medical and public health voices. And certainly, there's blame to fall on the side of the experts here as well. Far too many people, and I'm sure myself included at some point, stated some assumption about COVID that later proved not to be accurate. And to be sure, we'll continue to learn more about the virus over the coming months and probably even the coming years. There's much that we still don't understand, and we need to recognize that and be honest about the unknowns. For example, we don't know how much immunity is provided after you get sick. There's been demonstrations of reinfection, which puts a big question mark on the idea of durable immunity or lasting immunity to not be reinfected after you have the virus. We also don't understand why some people appear to be what are often called super spreaders. That is, they transmit large amounts of the virus during illness, while others who seem just as sick apparently do not. Furthermore, this being a new virus, we don't have a good idea of long-term effects. We know that certain viruses can cause prolonged or delayed complications well after the more immediate effects wear off. We have seen this with COVID-19 and multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, which can occur well after the initial infection has resolved. In the same vein, we're still learning about the effects of this virus that go beyond the respiratory system. We've seen many cases of the virus seemingly negatively affecting the heart, the kidneys, as well as causing blood clots and strokes. This is all to say that COVID has been a challenging moving target for understanding, both from the perspective of the experts as well as from the public. This is why we hope that this new website, TestUp-MKE, will be so valuable. It should serve as a single source of truth on questions regarding testing. Who should get tested? How do you know, how do you go about getting tested? And what does your test result mean? We're seeing areas of the county with increased concentrations of cases, and we expect to see increased case numbers going into the fall. So having this information easily available and readily accessible will be more important than ever. So shortly, we'll learn more about the TestUp-MKE website, which importantly will not replace 211, but will be a great addition and in multiple languages for folks who want to learn more about types of COVID tests, the testing process, and many other areas. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Thanks, Dr. Weston. Now we'll go over to Darren Roush at the Greenfield Health Department.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to join today. I'm going to go ahead and share the data because there's a couple highlights that are important to note for this week. So we're going to start today with the kids data. This particular report we've created and shared for a number of weeks. This is looking at daily cases of COVID-19 amongst Milwaukee County children under the age of 18. And you will see when I show you the whole county report, the trends are very similar. We've talked about that in the past. More recently, we've noticed a pretty consistent number of cases over the last several weeks, actually. A little bit of a plateau, but probably even a little bit more of a decrease in the suburban communities, as indicated by the blue line, than the city of Milwaukee. By comparison, when we look at the same report amongst the entire county population that I have now put up on the screen, we start to see a little bit of an increase as we look at our daily cases here, as well as an increased 7-day average in the city of Milwaukee and a plateau in the county. This is something we're going to want to watch very carefully in the coming weeks because it may be indicative of a slight upswing in cases throughout the county. We've shared death data before. Largely, our death data has been very consistent. The rates have been consistent for several months. We're still bouncing around that 1 to 2 deaths average in both the county and the suburban communities. Our hospitalization numbers remain pretty consistent as well. We've talked about the reproductive number a lot, and as we saw the spike for the city of Milwaukee, we would expect to see a blip in our transmission rate. Remember, the transmission rate is a number that indicates how many cases are coming from one laboratory confirmed case. And a transmission rate of 1 would indicate that for each case of COVID-19, on average, 1 additional person would become symptomatic. What we are seeing here in our rates is that we had a couple days ago, our 7-day transmission rate was well above 1, almost at the 1.25 level. And when we drill down on this number a little bit more and we compare both the city of Milwaukee and the suburban communities, we see that the increase is largely in the city of Milwaukee, with that rate almost reaching 1.5, while the transmission rate in the suburban communities is around 1. So it indicates to me that there's an increased activity in cases, as we saw in the previous data, within the city of Milwaukee that will bear more attention in the coming days and week. We've been tracking for a number of weeks different demographic indicators and demographic variables, and I want to continue to point out that our fastest growing population and cumulatively has the most number of cases is our population that is between the ages of 18 and 39. And not only do they have the most cases in that age group, the rate of disease is highest in that age group as well. And that's important to note because early on in the outbreak, our highest rate of cases was in those persons 80 years and older. Another point I'll make on this particular screen right here, you see down on the left, we have data split out by race and ethnicity. For many, many months, we've been talking about the story of the increased rise in COVID-19 disease in the Hispanic or Latinx community. Well, I can now say that the white and Caucasian population has nearly surpassed the Latinx Hispanic population, and that is a concern of ours as well. So the cumulative numbers in the white population are surpassing any other racial and ethnic group, although when we look at the rates among the Hispanic Latinx population are more than 2 times greater than any other subpopulation and more than 2 times greater than the African American and Asian subpopulations. We've looked at hospitalizations and we've talked about hospitalizations a lot over the last couple of weeks. We have seen, and I did report last week, that cumulative hospitalizations in the 18 to 39-year-old population has also surpassed the 80 plus age group. And that's certainly something that we need to continue to note. Hospitalization can be indicative of the severity of the illness, and seeing those rates climb is potentially problematic. When we look at the rates, we continue to see rates of hospitalization being higher in the oldest age group, but the sheer number of individuals getting hospitalized is a concern. And as we look at deaths, we will reflect as well here that in recent weeks, the African American population has been surpassed by the white population in terms of total deaths, and that continues to climb countywide. The rates overall for both groups are pretty similar, and certainly we want to continue to monitor that. While the death rate might be the highest in the oldest age group, we are seeing an increasing number of deaths in other age groups. We have an expert on testing coming to talk on this briefing after me, but I will continue to note that our testing numbers have decreased, and that is an unfortunate trend that we've seen really over the last 2 months. Our 14-day trend for percent positivity in Milwaukee County is relatively flat, and I'm sure Allison will have more to add to that story as well. I'm going to end today by talking about our incidence maps. This first map is an incidence of new cases throughout the pandemic, and we can see where the areas that are red are spots that are more indicative of high rates of COVID disease. And then when we look more recently at just what's happening over the last week, we see a very strong correlation of cases in the city of Milwaukee on the east side, Whitefish Bay, Shorewood, the south side of Milwaukee into West Milwaukee, and we even see some spots of concern in the southern suburbs. So it's something we want to continue to watch very carefully, as this data is some of the most recent in terms of case activity throughout the county. I just want to end today by talking about a couple factors that are really concerning in the data. The COVID-19 data in Milwaukee appears to indicate that we might be on the upswing in terms of cases within the county, with much of that current increase centered within the city of Milwaukee. With the larger growth in cases most recently amongst those that are 18 to 39 years old, we could presume that this is largely due to the start of the academic year and more cases being identified in Milwaukee area colleges and universities. But we do know that data occurs amongst other population groups, and the 18 to 39-year-old age window is a very big window. We need to give more careful consideration and attention to this data in coming weeks, but unfortunately, we also note that the pattern of increased cases is not something that is occurring in Milwaukee County alone. Today, the state is reporting its highest number of positive cases in any one day. The state is reporting 2,034 cases, positive COVID cases in the state, which signifies a continued surge of COVID-19 elsewhere in the state, and at rates that are probably a lot larger than some of what we've seen in Milwaukee County over the last few weeks. The data continues to support that testing has dramatically decreased, and we know that tests are readily available. So we encourage all of you who needs a test to seek out a test, and we'll talk next about some tools and where you can find that testing for you. Thanks very much for your time. I will now turn the briefing over to Allison True from the 16th Street Community Centers and the co-chair of the Milwaukee Community Testing Initiative. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Darren. And thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to talk about this initiative and this new platform, and obviously directly following all the statistics. I think it's clear to see the necessity and that testing is a huge piece of this fight against COVID. So making sure that we're addressing why people aren't getting tested, how we can encourage them to get tested, and better connecting them with resources that exist and the information that is available is a key piece to how we work together moving forward. So thank you for that. I'm really excited to launch this today, the Test Up MKE website, or we like to call it a platform. As I think Dr. Weston and Mayor Barrett mentioned, it is a new space online for everything that you need to know about COVID-19 testing. And I think the key piece to this is that we're really focusing on making it a trusted space, that the goal is to help everybody in the community, no matter where you're from, your language, your situation, understand and navigate the COVID testing situation. Although we've been in this environment now for some months, I think it's important to recognize that it's still somewhat of new territory, and we're still trying to figure it out as residents, as community members, and just get all the pieces together that we need to be able to make the right decisions and feel empowered to make the right decisions. So we hope to, through this website, to provide not just information that you need, but a dynamic space that has consistently updated information that's accurate, that answers questions, and that it's in real time so people can really trust it. It's difficult right now, as Dr. Weston alluded to, that it's really kind of a time of uncertainty and information is changing. And we want to make sure that this space is changing with the environment, and that when people come here and look for testing information, whether it be a testing site, or I have this question about contact tracing, or do I really need a test, that they can trust that this is a place that will give them accurate, up-to-date information. And I think that's something that's definitely needed right now, that go-to trusted space. And kind of in that spirit, in addition to it being a difficult time of uncertainty, we really see that it's a time of unity, and we wanted to reflect that in this platform. And it's reflected definitely through the multiple languages and the visuals that you'll see and the messaging that we're using to connect with all people. As cliche as it sounds, and however many times we hear this, we are in this together, and we want that feeling of inclusion and unity to really be at the forefront of this platform, and that every person that comes there feels like it's a space for them, that they can get what they need. I know it was alluded to before, but I think it's important to note that Test Up MKE was brought together by, as we heard before, a group of community leaders through the COVID testing initiative. And we're all representatives from community organizations across the healthcare field, health department, community health centers, hospital systems. But most importantly, I think it's unique because it's a group of people that are not only in that space and in the communication space, but they're working on the ground and kind of are in the mess of it, really connected to people's reality around testing and what they're experiencing. And that's really important. In addition to that, to making sure that it's a space that people connect with. And in addition to us as representatives kind of leading and supporting this charge, I have to say the site is 100% informed and framed by people like you and me, community members that are living through this pandemic, trying to figure it out with questions, concerns. And when you visit, you really will feel that community voice because it's made for us by us. You'll notice, for example, that we've used language and messages that are really easy for all of us to understand. It's been organized in a way that is easy to digest. I think I can speak for everyone when I say we're all experiencing a little bit of an information overload. And it's really hard to know what to listen to, what to trust, how do I decipher information coming from all of these different sources. I can guarantee that at Test Up MKE, you do not have to have a PhD to know what's happening, to know what to trust or understand what to do. And that's really important. We've gone back and forth numerous times with experts, community organizations, residents, and have a constant flow of information, feedback coming in from people on the ground to make sure that, yes, the information is helpful, it's accurate, it's up to date, but also that it's accessible for everybody in a real way. We've also, as the mayor mentioned, got to connect with a lot of other groups and initiatives that are happening right now, and that's really key because we're able to, yes, extend our reach through each other's work, but we're also able to lift up each other's work and support each other in kind of this goal of increasing testing, increasing health around the COVID situation. So I'm really excited. I think if it's okay, I'm just going to kind of do a quick demonstration and dive into the site. Let's see here if I can get my screen to share. Okay. So there's a few things that I will just kind of point out so everyone can get a little bit of a lay of the land. The first thing, as I mentioned before, the multiple languages. So the site is available in 5 languages: English, Spanish, Burmese, Hmong, and Arabic. And they're all natively translated, so it should feel extremely relatable, no matter what your language of preference. We also have an accessibility tool, which is wonderful. So individuals with disabilities are able to choose and navigate the site in a way that works best for them. We also have what I think is a really, really excellent source of information, people, is an assessment. So you'll be able to find it here, and they get tested and they get answers. It's sprinkled all over the site. And what it is a tool for individuals to kind of run through and figure out, get a little bit of guidance on whether or not they need a test. This, of course, is not meant to replace medical guidance or medical care, but it's just a tool for people to get a better understanding of what's happening, what they may need to do, and be able to kind of walk through something, normalize the situation, and figure out maybe what their next step could be without the pressure of having to give any personal information, show up anywhere. We know there's a lot, for a lot of people, making that step to share your information, to go here, to go there is big. So we want to make sure we're able to give people a way to walk through that information themselves and take it in, moving them hopefully one step closer to getting a test if they need a test. And it's got, I'm not going to go through it today, I'll let you walk through it, but it's got a number of photos and is very easy to navigate. And it actually pops up on the right side of your screen here too. I just disabled to make it easier for the presentation today. And of course, some of the main resources that you would expect to find on the site. We have all the testing locations organized by map and by location, a number of frequently asked questions that were informed by a lot of the work with people on the ground during surveys, talking to the community, resources, information about our partners and ways you can get involved as an individual or a community. And then of course, a number of things that helps us connect on a human level with each other, sharing stories about why I did it, what I did it, how easy it was, what happens. A lot of times we know that the best way to get somebody to make a choice and change a behavior is by connecting person to person with somebody you trust. And so that's a big piece of this site as well. So I think with that, I will not scroll through the whole thing with you guys, but I'm really happy to be able to share it with you today. And I think as we heard before, testing is just such an important piece, and we hope that this platform can be the space that meets people where they are, understands needs, barriers, whatever they may be, and then is able to connect, all of us to the testing resources that we need, no matter kind of the space in our life that we are. So I think that's all for me. I encourage you all to check out the site, share it, and help us spread the word about this new resource for Milwaukee.